We're going to talk now about the remaining structures which are not in emergency status or endangered status. But,
okay, well let's remind our viewers that they're watching the Jacksonville History Show, brought to you by the Jacksonville Historical Society and Comcast. And our guest is Edward Booth Jr., who has spent a lot of time along with other members of the society working on a most endangered list. We're now going to look at Category 3, which is maybe not as much in danger as 1 and 2, but on the kind of watch list.
Correct. And one thing I'd point out is that all of these photographs were taken during the month of July 2005. Mm-hmm. So this is a fresh look at these structures.
This is the way they look today.
Endangered structures in the Category 3 are items that need to be watched lest they run into the problem experienced with Category 2 structures. Mm-hmm. One example is the Ambassador Hotel, a rather large structure that sits on Julia Street in downtown Jacksonville. It has closed at the present time, underwent a renovation several years ago that did not improve its historic character. And by that I'd point out the windows that were placed in there. While certainly energy efficient, they certainly detract from the look and the feel of this building. But it is a large building that could easily be converted to condominiums.
And with so much of that going on in the downtown area, you would think that this building would be recycled for that use.
You know, from what we understand, it is structurally sound and would be readily adaptable to condominiums.
So it's in our number 3 category, but we're optimistic about it, actually.
Very, very optimistic, yeah. And I think there will be something that will come along in the near future for the Ambassador Hotel. One of Jacksonville's early signature buildings, the Barnett Bank, 112 West Adams Street. This structure is on the watch list right now because it currently experiences a number of problems. The air conditioning system has been unreliable. Most of the tenants have left. And it sits in a state of flux right now, but it is an example that was one of the flagship office buildings in Jacksonville through the early 1980s, and could easily be renovated and serve into the future. On a somewhat smaller scale is the Bisbee Building on 47 West Forsyth Street. This building is an early Clutho design from 1908. Really considered Jacksonville's first skyscraper. What was known as the Chicago style, but if you look at some of the preserved buildings in Chicago, this is a spitting image of it, and again is one of Clutho's early designs. Even earlier is the Covington Building, also known as the Churchwell Building, owing to the fact that Churchwell Company is boldly displayed across the top in the typical signage of the era, which was to paint over the brick. This building was constructed in 1905 and is probably our best example of an early commercial building in downtown Jacksonville, and furthermore it has survived almost intact and unchanged to this day, and we understand that it is in the process of being converted into condominiums, mixed-use office space. So the future does look bright for this structure.
And what will happen when that occurs is it'll be removed from our list.
Exactly.
Because it will have been saved. Okay.
And I think some new life was breathed into this project with the recent announcement that the old courthouse would survive, at least for the civil courts, with the new criminal complex being built down the street, so that this area as a commercial district seems secure. The Elena Flats apartments, these were constructed in 1909. This is the last surviving example of a downtown boarding house.
Where is that?
This is located at 122 East Duval Street. And a common theme with these buildings on the watch list is you generally see for sale signs in front of them, which to a preservationist is a danger flag, because it could mean that it's going to be preserved and renovated, but it could equally mean that it's going to be torn down and something like a parking lot will
And in
since been
downtown,
spliced.
sometimes the property is more valuable than the building sitting on it.
That's correct. But a couple other views of this. This is another building that survived virtually unchanged throughout the years. The old Federal Reserve Bank at 424 North Hogan Street, notable for a number of reasons, was built in 1923. The first major building in Jacksonville, designed by a female architect, Henrietta Dozier. And it also survives intact, but this is a good way to point out how modern structures can impinge upon a historic structure and virtually destroy it. This building has wonderful stonework, but the automated Skyway Express was built directly in its face and really prevents one from appreciating what the building looks like. We have to look at historical photographs to get an idea of what it once looked like. The opposite problem is demonstrated by Fire Station number 5 on Riverside Avenue. Endangered for a number of reasons. One is that all of its neighbors have been torn down, and it stands alone in the middle of a vast area of redevelopment.
Major redevelopment along Riverside.
And we're very concerned about this building. It's a handsome structure that has survived through the years. It dates back to 1910. It's nearly 100 years old, and is still in use as a fire station, and can continue to serve as a fire station, but for the desirability of this land for redevelopment.
And so the Historical Society is in some situations asking the city to take the lead in preserving buildings that it owns.
Correct, and we have been very successful over the years in doing that.
And in a little while we'll talk about some of the success stories, but let's go ahead and finish your, this is another view of Fire Station number 5.
The Florida Life Building, which stands on North Laura Street.
Around the corner from the Bisbee, which you showed.
That's correct, or that's coming up. That's coming up in a minute. But this is another Clutho design. Dates back to 1911. Is probably the prime example of a skyscraper in Jacksonville. Much of its ornamentation was removed 5 or 6 years ago because it was in danger of falling off. But it is in storage. It could be replaced. But this certainly is a building that would be worth saving, although a narrow building like that, due to modern fire codes, is very difficult to adapt to modern uses. The old Florida National Bank, this illustrates an important point that you can renovate a building, but as the years pass, it can still be on the endangered list.
Now, this building and the previous one, along with the Bisbee, are now, I believe, in the hands of the Police Fire Pension Fund.
That's correct.
And we're optimistic that they're going to do the right thing in terms of preserving the buildings and finding a new use for them.
This particular building was constructed in 1902, was extensively renovated in 1978, but again, due to water damage and some other problems, is in danger, but we're very optimistic about this. The Greenleaf Building, which is seen in the background, was built in 1927. Best known, I guess, is the site of Jacob's Jewelers and the clock on the corner.
Right. In spite of being hit occasionally by buses, it still survives.
It's been lucky for the past decade or so. The Jewish Community Center in Springfield is another very solid, sturdy building, currently owned by the federal government. It was built in 1928. It's a Marsh and Saxelby design. Has some very interesting interior features. It has a 1,200-seat auditorium and a food service facility capable of serving 500-600 people at a time.
And of course, this is a major topic of conversation in Springfield, the community trying to save it and opposing a plan to use it for the homeless, and the mayor went to bat to prevent that as well. So we'll see what happens. It has a great future if somebody can find a new use for it.
You can see very, very solid structure.
Yeah.
The Jones Brothers Furniture Building, this was built in 1926. Some very interesting architectural details that you can catch a glimpse of. That could easily be recycled as office space, as condominiums, loft apartments. We've been talking about downtown, Harry, but this moves us out into the Arlington section. A very interesting, not so much building, but a campus. We go back to the early days of the silent film era, the early 1900s through about 1915, the Norman Film Studios, which was the first and perhaps only African-American film production company. And most of the original buildings still survive today.
This is a building that would have been a number 1 a couple of years ago maybe, and now it's a number 3 because progress has taken place. It looks like it's going to be saved and become, you know, something really worthwhile there, but still a number 3, worth keeping an eye on.
It is primarily because it's a wooden structure and the hazards attendant with that, but it is in remarkable shape for its age. And in fact, Mr. Norman's widow ran a dance studio there up until the early 1970s, and the sign announcing her dance studio, which you see here, still hangs. But it's a large campus that.
And this would recreate the film studio as it existed in the silent film era.
It's a unique opportunity to do that. Everyone knows the Seminole Club downtown. It has had streaks of good luck and bad fortune. Right now, as you can see, it's for sale. This building has a tremendous amount of history behind it. President Teddy Roosevelt once gave a speech from the balcony of the building, and we think that that building should be saved, not torn down, in an office building placed there. The Snyder Memorial Methodist Church, this was built in 1902, right after the fire, is an excellent example of the type of craftsmanship that was in use during the building boom that followed the fire.
Occupied by the St. Johns River City Band for a while, but now its future is uncertain.
This is known as the Southern Drug Company, another Clutho design built in 1908 that is under renovation. We're not sure of the status of the renovation. Stanton High School, this is a Mellon Greeley design, built in 1917. It was the black high school in Jacksonville. Tremendous amount of history behind it. It has survived in remarkable shape. I think its last use was during the Super Bowl as a homeless shelter. The downtown original YMCA building.
This is a Clutho building, right?
Which is a 1908 Clutho design, which certainly could be renovated.
And I think the city has its eye on that building to acquire it for city offices.
It would be well served if they did a similar job to the one done on the St. James building across the street. And that brings us to the end of the Category 3 structures, and we're going to talk now about some success stories and about the future. And maybe this is an appropriate way to finish up this segment. We don't know how future generations are going to view the structures we put up. We hope they would value them. We hope they would appreciate their architectural significance. This is a good example, our new public library, that as we speak is in the final stage of construction.
So maybe 50 years from now someone will be fighting to protect it, who knows?
We hope so. It has some very interesting features, some interesting artwork.
We managed to get through our list. We have 1 minute left. There have been some victories, preservation victories, and we ought to highlight those briefly.
It's not all bad news.
That's right.
For every
Florida Theater, St. James Building, Old St. Andrews, where our headquarters is, the Historical Society, Prime Osborne Convention Center. So there have been some successes which we're proud of.
We certainly are. These are buildings that speak to Jacksonville's heritage and are put to good use by the current generation.
Edward Booth, Jr., thank you for being with us on the History Show. And we'll keep an eye on the list, which will change from time to time as buildings are saved and others become endangered.
Hope to come back in the near future and give an update for you.
That's our show for tonight. Thanks for watching the Jacksonville